As I'm sure many of us will have been experiencing, there has been a mass movement over to working remotely, and in a lot of cases there will have been new solutions implemented to enable effective collaboration. In some of these cases, where such solutions weren't already existing for organisations, a lot of money will have been spent putting them in place.
Cybercriminals are well aware of the fact that more of us are working remotely at the moment. As such, we've seen an increase in phishing emails that use particular themes at the moment. Obviously, coronavirus is quite an effective one. Whilst we haven't necessarily seen an uptick in cybercrime itself, the personalization and the sort of specialization of these emails to try and make sure they really hit home is what we've seen a bit of an uptick in. So coronavirus themed emails, things that you can do to keep yourself safe, maybe applications you might want to download. All these sort of things are things that people are trying to use to find their way into our minds and our computers. Virtual offices and remote working will afford cybercriminals plenty of opportunities to trip us up. Now, it could be that working from home means our IT support response is a little bit slower. Maybe we'll get that phishing email and we think because we're not sat next to our IT support, we're not going to check it out. We'll just go through and we'll see what we can do. There's also the fact that maybe you fire up your laptop at 8 p.m. at night or even earlier in the morning when your brain isn't necessarily working properly or as it would do when you're in the office. All these things can make us slightly more susceptible to a phishing email, for example. Maybe we'll click on that link that brings a piece of malware into our organization. There are plenty of reasons why home working, remote working, and virtual offices will afford cybercriminals more opportunities to attack us. That's why we have to be vigilant to make sure we do our best to prevent them from doing so.
When we're talking about working from home, really think about how secure your home network is and what's attached to it. Your routers with an default admin password, these passwords really need to be changed if you're still using the default password that the router came out of the box. Do your employees have to use a VPN to connect to your work network? They really should. And do you allow your staff to log on to public Wi-Fi to access your network? Because again, this could be quite dangerous. Whilst working from home may not be new to many organisations and employees, the current COVID-19 pandemic is forcing organisations to consider home working on a much greater scale and for a longer period of time. You may have more people working from home than usual, and some of these may not have done it before. So here's some general recommendations to help you support secure home working. Remote users may need to use different software or use familiar applications in a different way compared to what they do when they're in the office. So really, you should think about producing written guides for these features and test that the software works as described. Depending on the experience of your staff and the applications you provide, you should really consider producing a series of how do I guides so that your already stretched support team isn't overwhelmed with requests for help. For example, you might want to produce a how do I log in and use an online collaboration tool guide. Always remember though, many of your staff may already be stressed, so they're not in an ideal position to learn new technologies. In addition to this, they may not be in a position to ask an office workmate for help as they would do if they were in the office. You should check to see how staff are coping, not just in terms of how they use new technologies, but how they're adapting to having to work in many different ways.
There should be a greater focus now on device security over network security. And what we mean by that is having security solutions directly on the devices themselves, as the devices may be in home networks, and looking at the firewalls for home networks would be too big a workload for an IT department. From this point, we need to look at protecting the connection between the device and the office network. And one way we can look at doing this is using a VPN or a virtual private network, which encrypts all the information going between the device and the office network. An alternative to working on these remote devices is to use a remote desktop solution, which would allow you to see the screen on a machine in the office rather than working on the device in front of you directly. For guidance, we can look at already existing frameworks, such as the government's Cyber Essentials Standard, which is designed with 5 key controls in mind to help protect businesses against 80% of the most common cyber attacks. This is a free framework which you can find online and apply to your business. There is also the Information Assurance of Small to Medium Enterprises Governance Standard, the IASME standard, and this looks at how you manage your IT systems from a security perspective. First of all, you should identify what is important to your business and how it relies on technology. You should look for solutions to aid in protecting and then check that they are fit for purpose. And one of the best ways to check that they are fit for purpose is to use one of the frameworks that we've mentioned previously and seeing if it meets all of the controls that are outlined in them. You should make sure that all your solutions work together in harmony and don't conflict with one another. And also you should seek professional advice before implementing any of them.